for organizations who are just getting into it and trying to think through, like, what does it look like to bring a programmatic lens? Let's take a look at what budgeting generally looks like without programs. It looks like line items. So here, and I'll show this same department in just a moment. Here's a city planning department, and if I broke out their line item budget on the non-personnel side, it might look something like this. It's 300 grand made up of cleaning and grants and printing and binding and so on. And maybe the department goes through budget development and they're saying, you know what, I think we can save a little money on computer maintenance this year. Professional services, however, we're looking for a consultant. We need 25 grand. Workforce training at the line item level, sure, we need a little bit extra training this year. And so you add them all up, and it's a $30,000 or $29,000 ask in the budget process based on line items. And while this is easy on the departments to put together, they're used to doing line items, it's pretty simple. For the decision makers who have to evaluate this request coming through, this is not so straightforward. You go, what is the 25 grand for professional services going to get us? How is it related to our strategic plan? What about the workforce training? Is it training on anything? Are you going to a cooking class? Is it related to our sustainability goals, right? I want to know a lot more information about what these requests are all about. So applying a programmatic lens and the data that we've just talked about, we want to be able to take, for example, this $25,000 request in professional services, here it is over here, and break it down into the programs that it represents. You can see 15,000 was actually for a quartile 1, meaning highly relevant, very related to your strategic plan, ranks very highly program. 15,000 of the professional services is actually going to a quartile 1 program for environment, sustainability, and resiliency. And another 10 grand was going to a lower quartile 3 program, has less to do with results, and it was around expanding public art awareness and opportunities. And as decision makers, we want to be able to have this information to bring to bear. It adds so much more context. We're anticipating the questions that all elected officials have is, tell me more about your budget requests and where you're cutting also. Tell me where you're reducing the budget. Are we reducing a high priority program overall? Is this an appropriate recommendation? This is the kind of context that we want to add. So the way we get there is in budget development. If I'm requesting an FTE or a line item increase, just like I have always done in the past, first off, we want to find out what service does this request belong to? Is it a brand new service? Is it an existing service? And if we can't tie it to a program, then there are certain cases where you're just going to have blanket line item increases or decreases, like a fuel inflation or something like that. But in general, we want to say, please go back and tell me how this request for resources actually ties to a program in your program inventory. And depending on whether it's a new service or existing service, tell me more about how did that program score? Is it mandated? Are you asking for these FTE because there's a new mandate that requires us to increase our level of service? Does it have anything to do with our strategic plan? We're trying to link that budget request ultimately with outcomes that we've now scored all of our programs against. So you take something like a traditional departmental request from a department like animal care and control. Maybe they're asking for 2 new FTE. They usually give you a business case. Hey, growing population of animals in our community, and maybe your board has asked for a specific explanation of how it ties to climate or equity. We want to do is say, tell me more about this request. Oh, it's not just a departmental request for 2 FTE, but it's to veterinary services. That's a program within animal care and control. Awesome. I can picture veterinary services more so than this entire department. I then learn that it's quartile 4. I can see how it's scored. I can see how it's currently staffed overall. And what we want the departments to be able to do is actually click into the veterinary services program and begin to build their budget development requests within the tools overall. We want them to get into the personnel. How is this program currently funded? tell me about the allocation of 2 new staff members, and I'll show you this live here in just a moment, and submit their recommended budget proposals based on the programs and tying everything back to the line items, because that's how we have to keep track of the budget. But now we're synchronizing all of the other programmatic business intelligence that we put together along the way. And the reason we want to do that is because depending on what we know about the program, if it's low priority, we have a bunch of follow-up questions we want to ask. We want to say, ah, man, you're asking for 2 new FTE for this program that has very little to do with our results. Follow-up question, is it paying for itself? Is it coming with a grant? Is it coming with ARPA resources? Is it coming with programmatic revenue or fees or charges? If the answer is no, we are actually asking for general fund dollars or general government resources to fund a low priority program, we could ask a follow-up question. Will the additional funding change the nature of how we provide the program in such a way that it will increase its relevancy? It'll link to results better? That might be a good case. If the answer is still no, man, this is a pretty weak case. Is there a partner? How did it score in reliance? Are we sure there isn't anybody else who could assume this responsibility? Why are we taking it on in local government? And if the answer is no, holy smokes, is it mandated? Are we forced to do this? Are our hands tied? If the answer is yes to any of the above, that might be a compelling proposal. Similarly, on the high priority side of things, our refinement questions would still include, hey, this is a high priority program, but you don't just get carte blanche for endless funding. Does it increase our ability to achieve results? Is that what's going to take place with the business case? If yes, we're going to move it into the recommended phase. If not, we want that ability to differentiate. The Insights light bulb, which is our portal for all the various requests on programs that we can put together. So again, whether it's outside of the budget or directly within the budget, this is where we go. If I were to go back to Bureau of Animal Care and Control, here's my program inventory. So I'm a department and I'm now approaching budget development. And I can go and find, here's animal care and control operations, animal detention, care and euthanasia, and so on and so forth. If I wanted to add a request, I create my budget request and I come in, and in Pittsburgh's case, they had a couple of key areas that they wanted to track, some key questions, but I might say, this is request for +2 FTE for increasing needs in animal care. But what's really cool is it's directly associated with the program. I have the program costs already. If I wanted to get some basic program detail, I can come and get my scoring and a breakdown of the costs overall. But for my request for 2 new FTE, how does this impact our climate goals? This is important for Pittsburgh. It was, in some ways you might think, haven't they already addressed this because they've scored programs against their strategic plan? This is actually asking for your request itself, not the program in particular. We already have that data, but for the request, is this going to help us with our climate goals? In this case, no impact whatsoever. How about our impact on equity? No impact really. Okay, this is going to be important because as decision makers get all this data, they wanted to treat preferentially any budget requests that had impacts on these particular results. And for programmatic change, is it a basic inflation of costs? Is it increased service level? We've tried to bring in any of those blueprint related program features that you could choose, but this is a flexible category as well. And I'm adding my program request. You can add multiple requests to a particular program. So I might, for this case, I might have 2 FTE for increasing the needs of demand, but I also might have some basic inflation on our fuel costs, and I would add a different style of request for that. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at this one. We then can move into the personnel and non-personnel aspects of this program and create our budget request. In this case, it was 2 new FTE, which is a personnel request. Here's the current calculated cost, which is really neat. So I can look at everybody who is currently participating on this program. And as I'm considering the 2 new people who I want to bring on, you can create a brand new position if the type of FTEs coming on board does not work for you today, or you can mimic or model the request off of anybody else in the department. So I might say, hey, what I really needed is a delivery driver. And the tool is bringing up, here's what you're currently paying your delivery driver. And I might say, you know, I need a little extra buffer. So I'm bringing in $80,000 and I'm going to add this FTE to my request. New position is submitted. And I need one more. And my second person is just a basic administrative specialist. And I think it kind of looks like administrative specialist 6, around 50,000 bucks. I'm just going to go with this. So this is kind of handy. This is not built into your compensation and classification information that you might have in an HR portal. It's giving the department a chance to enter in a basic assumption about this person. And as I now move down, I scroll down all the way, you see my current allocation of people, and here's my request. These are the 2 new people who are coming on board. Great. If I had any non-personnel requests, I could add those here, but in this request, it was only personnel, but I would just go right into my request if I needed more operational supplies for this program or more workforce training, as we saw before, I would just add those into the request overall. I move to save my request. Fantastic. And that is how every budget development request would get created in the first place. As I'm sure you have some variation of this next step, which is what we call refining the budget request, where you're asking a host of additional questions that might be pertinent besides what you already have information on in the initial ask. So if I go to Bureau of Animal Care and Control, and I've got my 2 new FTE, when I click on my recommend, this is asking, these are customized. Pittsburgh is asking, how is this request critical to the city's programs overall? They just want a free-form reply. Please describe your assessment for this request impact on climate, really important to them. Is it a multi-year request? You might ask, can we use ARPA resources to fund this? Have you considered it? Are there any resources reallocated to offset this request, or any new revenues that you could include? So this is the narrative portion where departments are able to enter in all of their background information. And I won't do it now just for the sake of, I think you get it. And we save it. Fantastic. Now I have my narrative saved. And we do have downloadable reports to just get a PDF summary of everything that has been proposed with department information, with the program scores that have been accumulated. So you end up with a dossier that you are quickly paging through, and you can go through with your departments as they're making their pitch. And you can ask them those same clouds and triangles questions when they're asking for FTE increase with these 2 new FTE for a quartile 4 program. You could say, this appears to have very little to do with our results. Can you go back and tell me, do we have an opportunity to bring in revenue? The same questions that we had included as well. Finally, the departments might not get to see this, but you certainly would. In terms of a summary, we have our overall budget summary broken out into personnel, non-personnel, the current budget, the requests on the table, and what you're moving forward towards approved within a balanced budget overall. And the approved category is tracking anything that I'm saying yes to over here. And I'm just going to click a few of these. Here's my 2 new FTE, growing population of animal needs. And the first thing to take a look at is the budget requests in total versus what we've said yes to on the approved side as it pertains to quartiles. So clearly, back to our clouds and triangles framework, you're hoping that a lot of the requests have to do with quartile 1 or quartile 2 programs, or certainly your approvals, but we're also starting to see some quartile 3 and some quartile 4. This is your tracker. And I'll show you, you can download this in just a moment as well, filter on the table and have the exact same information. This is where you're checking yourself. Is this the right thing to do? Am I, for all of the budget requests that are moving forward and getting approved, are we adding to our quartile 4 spend? Or are we predominantly adding to our programs that have a lot more alignment with the results that we're trying to achieve? We can see the same thing as it pertains to basic program attributes. Are we adding towards programs that are highly mandated? Is that the nature of a lot of our requests this year? Is it about increasing demand, serving the majority of our population? In Pittsburgh's case, they also wanted to know about equity impact and climate impact overall. I will download just a quick export. This is not producing a budget book with a narrative and a budget message and a cover photo of Gastonia, but it is the data to support your recommended budget requests, your approved budget requests overall. And I wanted to show you one thing that I thought you would find attractive. So I have my program summaries of what's coming through, ongoing, a one-time request, the budget impact, and the impact of these programs on the various scores. But keep in mind for a second, remember, we made those requests at a program level because we have all of the additional information, but we tied all of those requests to the line items in the background, so I can disaggregate all of the requests back to, are they general fund, city planning department, permits division, and our already pre-established chart of accounts. So I can get the information back out in terms of what is requested versus what has been approved, regardless of the program data, because after you've made the decision based on your program data, what you really want is to export this back out into what is the recommended budget. Can someone give me the bottom line on 11101, workforce training within the general fund? So I just wanted to show you that this comes out, and I'll do just a quick filter so we can see. I'll get rid of my zeros. Somebody had a reduction in professional services overall. Here's our workforce training recommendation that's tied to another program. Here's our professional services, our office supplies, another workforce training that had a reduction overall. So I just wanted to give you the kind of punchline that you're going to want to put this back into your budget system or your financial system at an approved amount after a meeting like you had last night, and this is how you're going to do it. And we have the same thing on the personnel side. So you can see all the requests bundled within the context and presented within the context of programs, and you can see all the non-personnel and personnel requests here unbundled and back to what you know is your line item budget, which we're not getting out of the line item budgeting business. We still have state reports to file. On the accounting side, we still have spending authority, appropriation authority to regulate. So it all comes back out that same way.